But let's look at this a little further with political analyst Mpumelelo Mkhabela. Mpumelelo, thank you so much for your time. I mean, the ATM, it's been 2 years in the making. They've been waiting for it, and we saw them go to court this week. And, it was struck off on the basis of urgency. And today they come into the National Assembly saying that they are not going to participate in this because it's sub judice. At the same time, other political parties say they should have forged ahead. Do you think that they shot themselves on the foot for not taking part in the motion of no confidence which they brought against the president?
Well, I think that the ATM is fully aware that their motion would not pass in an open contest because they are relying on the fact that the ANC might be divided. And we know the divisions in the ANC, the different factions, the so-called RET faction, the so-called Cyril Ramaphosa faction. They battle it out internally in the ANC. So the ATM is focused on those internal fights of the ANC and is hoping that some members of parliament that don't support the president politically in the ANC might, if given an opportunity to vote in secret, vote against the president. So that's why they are fighting for a secret ballot. They know that in an open contest, something like that is very remote. By the way, even in a closed contest, you may argue that there might be a slim chance, but it's the slimmest of chances really. The ANC, when it's under attack, when it's being attacked by other parties from outside, those factions internally, they tend to matter less, and then they sort of regroup and unite, only to revive their own factions or internal fights when there's no external threat from another party.
Now, when he was speaking to reporters earlier, the president, that is, at that NUM, anniversary celebration earlier, he said that he's unfazed by what is happening. I mean, he's just a spectator. He's not worried at all. And the ANC chief whip this afternoon saying that this was a waste of time and they really were ready to forge ahead should the ATM have done so. I wonder, looking at the internal dynamics, as you say, should it have gone privately, but at the same time looking ahead at that conference in December, should he have been worried at all?
I don't think so, Bongiwe. The president is quite strong at the moment. And even if you take into account those factions in the ANC and the fact that some members of parliament belong what you might call to his opponents within the ANC, I don't think they've got sufficient courage, first of all, and secondly, I don't think that there's sufficient numbers, to put together a strong 50+1% to take the president down. So I think, nevertheless, it doesn't necessarily mean that a motion of no confidence, even if it faces no prospects of success, it's a waste of time. It's not a waste of time for opposition parties if you look at what is their strategy. Their strategy is to place in the national agenda doubts about the capacity of the president. And of course, the president is technically their opponent, is somebody that they oppose, somebody they wish to replace in an election. That's the role of the opposition parties in parliament. Otherwise, there will be no need for an opposition if you are not interested in contesting power. And part of the way to contest power is to keep on exposing weaknesses on your opponents. So even if a motion of no confidence fails, the fact that it's been put on the national agenda, the fact that you and I are discussing it now, it's in a way part of the opposition strategy to show that they are busy. They are trying to expose the weaknesses of the government and they're trying to hold the government to account. It's an accountability tool, regardless of whether or not it succeeds.
And Mpumelelo, let's look at the internal dynamics within the ANC itself. I mean, we saw the president of the Women's League, being convicted in court, Batabile Dlamini, and the party's Treasurer General at the back of the NEC meeting, of course, talking about the developments around her, and even in one interview saying she must resign, but she's now hitting back, saying it's unfair. They haven't done the same with others. And this, of course, is a matter that we may see end up within the disciplinary structures of the party. I'm keen to find out from you, how do you see this one playing out?
Well, Bongo, I think this is part of the problem the ANC has had in dealing with corruption, the lack of consistency. You can single out the number of cases. We can even expand on the list that you have just provided now of many other members or members of parliament and former members of cabinet or even civil servants who traditionally come from the ANC. The treatment is not necessarily the same. And that's what actually makes it difficult for the ANC, partly, to fight corruption. We know, for example, now Zandile Gumede in eThekwini is contesting to be chairperson of that region, notwithstanding the fact that she has got charges, she's facing serious corruption charges, and there is this standing decision of the ANC that if you are charged with corruption, you need to step aside. But it doesn't seem to be weighing down on her. She seems to be very much eager to contest. And if you look at the stance that Bathabile Dlamini is taking, it's along similar lines that, regardless of the fact that she has been found guilty of perjury, which is a serious crime of dishonesty, but she still wants to soldier on to hold on to her position. You can name a few, and in Zweli Mkhize, of course, there are people that are busy pushing that, notwithstanding the digital vibe scandal, they are pushing that he gets nominated to contest the president's, or at least the deputy president's position. So I think all of this is part of the failure of the ANC to be very consistent in dealing with corruption, and number one. Number two, to allow corruption to be part of party political positions, that, it gets used, in an instance where somebody is seen to be a victim of whatever faction, and therefore the corruption, the real essence of corruption, gets undermined, and the effects thereof gets undermined because everything is clouded by this political contest, and all of us are supposed to believe that, oh no, so-and-so is not guilty, it's just part of the politics. So in that way, I think it undermines the battle against corruption, it undermines the rule of law, and it subjects the entire republic to all of this spectacle of the ANC. And in this case, it's obviously earmarked to undermine the president's attempt to get rid of corruption.
All right, Mpumelelo, I think it's going to be, we can see, given how things are playing out in the public domain, it's going to be an interesting road to December, as we cannot obviously read what is currently happening in Parliament, in isolation against what is, of course, going on currently even within the own party with its own internal dynamics as well. But we'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much for your time. That was Mpumelelo Mkhabela, a political analyst.